Peace and blessings. Assalamu
Like,
And welcome back to another episode of the Mega Show. So, as you guys can probably already tell by the title, this show in particular is about courting. We're entering to that season, in a world they call it cuffing season. I don't know why I guess it's like just the nature for us to want to be around people when it gets cold. I don't know.
but cuffing season insinuates that it's only going to be temporary, and you go into it knowing it's only temporary. Cuffing season, so you're only going to do this with this particular person for a limited time period.
But they have like marriage season. They have like certain seasons for certain things.
Okay.
So
but marriage is supposed to be
long, but there's still a season for marriage.
True. Yeah.
But anyway, this video is about courting. Just want to give like some helpful tips, some advice. If you are looking to begin courting, thinking about courting, or even in a courtship, because those of you who do not know what courting is not dating. Courting and dating is not the same thing. Courting is basically, as we say in the Nation of Islam, is taking somebody to court. Not literally, but you're bringing evidence that would prove you to be, or them to be, a good candidate for the both of you. So you're proving or bringing the evidence that would help to make a final decision on whether or not you two are compatible enough to be married, because marriage is a very, if not the most important decision that you will make in your life, because who you decide to marry can ultimately determine how your life may turn out. And so you want to make sure that whoever you do choose to marry, that it's a sound decision, that it's based on reason and not based on a whole bunch of emotion and things like that. You want to be reasonable in your judgment.
Let me add to that real quick. Though it is a very important decision and it's not to be taken lightly, however, we shouldn't overthink it and we shouldn't overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
The decision-making process. I just wanted to add that into it. It's very important that you choose wisely, but don't overthink it.
So what are some things that are considered overthinking?
Well, what are some things considered overthinking? Well, it's like everybody's preferences is different. So I can't tell a person, a man or a woman, what to look for in a potential spouse. I know what I was looking for, and by the grace of Allah, I found that, right? And I didn't settle, so I don't even like using that word, settle. No, but we do have to be realistic in our decision-making process as far as who we are looking to potentially court and inshallah marry. But as far as the question, I would just say be realistic. Be realistic in your expectations. First of all, be realistic in yourself, right? Be realistic in yourself, meaning that I'm not going to expect my spouse to be this top-notch FOI, this top-notch MGT. They own it, right? Staunch soldier. And I still got a lot of things I'm working on myself. Because we all do, right? So I think it comes down to being realistic.
Right. And just to add to what he said, the minister said, Brother Nuri has said this before, that the person that you're looking for is inside of the person that you marry, but you have to mind that person out. And so, like he said, the person may not be perfect, but they should hit at least majority and the most important things that you want in a person. They should have those qualities. They may not have all of them, but it does not mean that they can't grow to develop those qualities. So don't, like I said, overthink it, but also don't cut yourself short.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You want to make sure that the key principles that are important to you, that they at least are able to bring that, or they have those characteristics that you're looking for.
Yeah, just the most important things. You identify maybe the top 3, 4, 5 most important things that's important to you, and then scale it down to that, and then look for those qualities or characteristics in a potential court me. That's it. And obviously, we all want somebody that's attractive, right? But what's attractive to me may not be attractive to the next person. So just based upon your own eyes and what you see in that person, both on a spiritual level and a physical level. Of course, you want somebody attractive. We don't want somebody unattractive that we gonna be married to the rest of our life.
Right.
I gotta look at this person the rest of my life, right?
Right, wake up to it.
Right. You know what I'm saying? So I at least want to be I want to be attractive to the eye, and mentally as well. So just want to add that to it.
Right. And one other important thing when you're courting is that you kind of want to keep it between y'all. You don't want to put a whole bunch of people into y'all's business. You may have friends or the sisterhood. It may be okay to share a few things, but you don't want to share a lot of stuff about your courtship, because even though it's not dating, it's not a relationship, you're building a friendship. Let's get that clear. You're building a friendship. This should be platonic. It's platonic while courting. There is no baby, I love you, holding hands, kissing, hugging, and all that. No. This is so that you can make a sound decision. And so you don't want a whole bunch of people also in your business, because they can also persuade or try to persuade your decision making. So you don't let a whole bunch of people know your business. It's between y'all. And if y'all decide to get married, you don't have a whole bunch of people looking at you, because they don't like the person. So they're looking at you kind of crazy because of what you might have said, or they're looking at you kind of like, well, why didn't you marry him because of what you said about him, or her, that you made her really like them, so they didn't understand why the courtship didn't work out. But you don't want other people's judgment on what y'all doing, because it's nobody else's business. Courtship is, inshallah, will lead to marriage, which is half of y'all deen, half of our faith, and that is also between y'all. That's not nobody else's business. So keep the courtship private as possible, so that everybody in y'all's business.
To add to that, I think that there's a duality to that. I think what she's saying is 100% right, that it's a private thing. But when you're in a city, like me and her courted in the same city. We was from the same city, so we wasn't, courting from separate cities. We was in the same city. And so when you around the brotherhood and the sisterhood, people gonna know.
Well, yeah.
People gonna talk, right?
Right.
But it's about how much information are you sharing with them throughout the courtship process. They're gonna know, even if you're in separate cities. If you did it properly, the laborer should know, because you should have signed paperwork submitting your courtship papers, so that the leadership and the laborers are aware that you are courting someone that's doing it properly. So people will know. But I think the key thing is, especially in the time that we live in now, is social media. You're in courtship. That don't mean that you should change your Facebook status to "it's complicated," engaged, or in a relationship. Now, if you complete the courtship process and get engaged, all praise is due to Allah. But don't jump the gun.
But even if you do get engaged, you're still not married,
right? Because
the engagement can get called off.
True.
So even though y'all may be engaged, all praise is due to Allah, but you should still treat it as if though y'all are still in that, because y'all still courting, but y'all still in that beginning courtship time. You know what I'm saying? Again, no kissing. I believe that the sister can cook one meal for the brother. That's what's appropriate, one meal. But there is no extra stuff, the kissing, the hugging, the touching, all that is still frowned upon.
I'll tell you another thing that you should do. Yeah, a lot of people, especially grown people, right? Chaperones. It may sound childish, it may sound high schoolish or whatever, but it's actually in the courtship manual. And again, the manual is not a law in the Nation of Islam, but it is a good guide to keep us on the straight and narrow and not make any mistakes along the courtship process. And in the courtship manual, it talks about chaperones. So if y'all going out to eat, a chaperone should be there. They don't have to be there all up in your face, right? But be there just really to protect both of you. Because as human beings, we are social beings. If you're developing emotions for this person, feelings for this person, let's be honest, you can end up having sex, right? And so that's not what we want to do. So a chaperone is there to protect both people. If you're going out to eat, going to the movies, whatever you're doing, somebody should be there. Again, they don't have to be all up in y'all's face, but be there just for protection. And once y'all get married, inshallah, man, y'all can do what grown people do, right? So, but just not jumping the gun,
Right.
because sex clouds and messes up everything.
And you want to make a very sound decision. Again, you know, like he said, we're social beings, and sometimes, you know, we have that urge, but you don't want that urge to force you to do something that may not have been good in the end. You know what I'm saying? Long term, like a moment of pleasure equaling, you know, years of suffering, because we couldn't withhold the temptation. You know, we couldn't stand up against the temptation. You know, resist the devil and the devil will flee. It's easier said than done,
Yeah.
but the more that you say no, the more discipline you would develop to be able to control those urges. But yeah, like,
Yeah, if you got to this point, hopefully you have, you know, haven't fornicated, and now you're in a courtship process. If you got to this point and done that this good thus far, and just suck it up. You can just
hold
suck,
on.
yeah, just suck it
Hold
up
on.
until the process is completed,
hold on.
and then
Sorry.
no, then you know, no holds barred.
Right. And I know, like, you know, talking about sex sometimes can be a little taboo, you know, because we're Muslims and things like that, but sex is natural. God created sex, and so obviously you don't want to be, you know, disturbing and disgusting with sex, but it is a topic that should be discussed because it happens. It's natural. This is, you know, this is what humans do. This is how we procreate. And so you know, just try to abstain from the sex, because again, it clouds your decision making, and you want the reason why, inshallah, it doesn't happen, but if something does happen in a marriage to where it cannot be reconciled, you guys cannot find common ground, and it ends up resulting in divorce, you want it to be because something happened in the marriage, and not because there were red flags and things like that while y'all were courting, but because A, you either just wanted to be married and thought you could overlook those things, or B, because you were having sex and weren't able to see the red flags, you guys ended up getting married, and then it transferred into the marriage, and because you weren't careful enough, because you weren't seeing it or aware of it, or because you just overlooked it, now you guys are in turmoil, and the marriage ends up being dissolved because you just wanted to be married, or because you couldn't withhold the temptation. You know what I'm saying? So like, we grown, and we can't tell each other what to do. We can't, you know. But honestly, brothers and sisters, like, sex, keeping from sex is a very key, important aspect to courting.
Yeah, and I'm gonna throw something out there. I don't know who all be watching the video, if it's strictly members of the Nation of Islam, or, you know, members, lost found members, of, you know, outside of the Nation of Islam. But I told my wife some years ago, and I want to drop it on y'all. If you really like somebody, right? This is really for outside the Nation of Islam, right? Because you can find information from anywhere, not just, you know, in what we believe in, but information can be found. Truth is truth, and it can be found anywhere. If you really like somebody, of course, we don't date, but if you really like somebody and you out there dating, don't have sex with them.
It complicates everything.
Sounds crazy, right? Because we live in America. But if you really like them, don't have sex with them. And just think about that for a minute. And then, without taking up too much time in the video, it makes a big difference. It really does. Once you have sex with them, everything changes. I'm talking about not being married. If we married, do what the married people do. Right now I'm talking about dating. We don't date, but we know the world does. But if you really like somebody and you really want to build something with this person, do not have sex with them. Just think about it. How many times did y'all end up having sex and things changed? Just think about it. Again, I'm not talking about married people. I'm talking about non-married people. So I just wanted to drop that on y'all. But going back to the courtship process, another thing is, courtship shouldn't be a long, drawn-out process. It doesn't take that long to figure out if this person is or is not a good candidate for a spouse. It don't take that long. The manual says 6 months max, right? I believe prior to 1 month engaged. I believe prior to 75, the believers back then got married in 90 days. That's 3 months. You either married or you not. But this long, but we don't have that. Now we got 6 months, which is double, right? From the first. 6 months, it don't take long. They either are or not a good candidate in your mind. It's one of the two. It don't have to take the whole 6 months, you know, but 6 months is the max, according to the manual. 1 month engaged, then get married. It don't take a long process. They either are or not. You're wasting your time and you're wasting their time if you haven't made your mind up.
And it's really for our own safety, again, because we are social beings and don't want to resort to fornicating. But honestly, you know within the first few months whether or not, if you're doing it right, whether or not this person, and if y'all being honest, because that's something you have to be honest, that whether or not this person is really compatible with you. You know within the first few months whether or not you really want to be with this person, if you're being honest with each other. So,
and that doesn't mean that, you know, if you agree to marry this person, that there's not going to be challenges. Mm-hmm. That's not what we're saying here. You're taking two basically strangers, right? Unless they grew up together and, you know, with some exceptions. But for the most part, Nation of Islam, we're strangers, right? You meet them, you think they're handsome, you think they're nice looking, and then you enter into the courtship process, and then if you get married, you're still strangers, right? So you're learning each other, right? So there's going to be trials and tribulations. And inshallah, we haven't abandoned the process, so we're continuing to grow and develop, both parties, right? And so by two people who continue to grow and develop, you're constantly going to have to learn about the person, right? Because they're growing and developing. Hopefully you're growing and developing. So in that, it presents trials and tribulations and challenges. So it's not going to be perfect, right? But you know, it's still such a beautiful thing. Like, it really is, to have one person that you know got your back. Hopefully you got their back. And I mean, don't let the world fool you. Don't let social media fool you, man.
Marriage is lit.
Yeah, it really can.
Especially when it's to the right person.
It really can. Now, it's still gonna be challenges, right? But that's life. Like, right. You got here, your sperm got through the to the egg. That was a hell of a challenge, right? That was a hell of a trial. Your mom went through 9 months. That was a hell of a trial. The labor process to actually bring you forth, that was a hell of a trial. It's beauty in it, but it's still a trial. It's the same thing with marriage. It's the same thing.
And when bringing that into, I don't say metaphor, but as you were speaking, it made me think that's a very sacred time before the birthing process. It's a very sacred time. So that courting process is very sacred. You know, and if you expose it, if it gets exposed to outside forces before its due time, it might not make it. Mm-hmm. And so you want to make sure that you keep it safe, you protect it, watch who you're talking to, who you're around. You know what I'm saying? If you're around somebody who's bitter about courting, who's bitter about relationships, who's bitter about marriage, it might affect the way that you think. You know what I'm saying? And so again, as a woman that's pregnant, she has to be mindful of who she's around, who she's talking to, what she's watching, what she's eating. You know, it's spiritually, it can connect to courting and marriage. And so, you know, in marriage, we're talking about courting, but in marriage, as you're courting, just be prepared to be tested on the vows that you took. Because again, marriage is half of our faith, and if you can't be honest and loyal and respectful and loving and true to your spouse, you can't say that you can have that type of relationship with God. You know what I'm saying? Because again, those vows that you take in sickness and health, till death do you part, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, that is the same covenant that you're taking with God. You know, if God tries you with straightness in your means, are you going to forsake him? If you get tried with straightness and finances in your marriage, are you going to forsake your spouse because of that? You know, if one of y'all gets sick, if you're sick, are you going to forsake God because you became sick? Are you going to forsake your spouse because they're sick and you have to take care of them? You know what I'm saying? You're going to be tested and tried on those vows. This is not something to take lightly.
Yep.
You know?
And just to add to that, you know, during the courtship process, don't be scared to ask tough questions. Don't be scared to ask very serious questions. I know we get caught up in the emotion, you know, of being in a courtship. I went through it. I'm sure my wife went through it. It's natural. It happens. But you have to be able to control your emotions and ask serious, tough questions, because, again, this is a person that you're considering to spend the rest of your life with, right? So you have to have a good idea of how they think, what are their plans, their outlook on life, their outlook as being a husband, a father. You know, I can't really speak from the woman's perspective so much. To a certain degree, I can. But you have to ask the serious. Don't be scared. Don't be worried about scaring them off. or they're not going to like me anymore, they're not going to want to court me. That's immature. And if you do scare them off with the tough questions, then that's why we in courtship. Right. Is now there's no strings attached. You know, we're gonna just go ahead and dissolve the courtship.
And you might have got saved a headache.
So don't be scared. Ask. This is a person that you're gonna spend the rest of your life with, potentially. So if you scared to ask or they're scared to answer, well then that's probably your answer right there. Right. Because this is not a game and it shouldn't be taken lightly. So if you can't ask questions, then how you gonna really be in a trial, in a tribulation, in a major challenge with your spouse if you're scared to ask questions?
Yeah. And
it can be uncomfortable. I get it, but we're adults, right, and we should be able to handle that.
And in the courtship manual, there's like a list of like 2 pages of questions to ask your spouse, like things like, what's your credit score? Do you have STDs? You know, like serious questions that need answers. Yeah. You know, and hopefully you two are being honest with each other, and you're not lying about the questions.
Yeah.
So, those are a few, you know, a little bit of advice and tips about the courtship process. If you guys have any questions, is there anything else you want to say?
Well, I think you pretty much covered it.
If you guys have any questions about, like, any more questions about the courtship process, you know, even about marriage, you know, comment down below some of your questions, and maybe we can do a video answering your questions. From our perspective, we've been married for 7 years. We're actually celebrating our 7th year anniversary. We only knew each other for 7 months before we got married, and now we're on our 7th year of marriage. So all praise is due to Allah. But again, if you have any questions, concerns, any of that, leave it down in the comment section below. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your sis really appreciates it, needs it. You know, if you didn't know, go check out Reflections. Just dropped about a month ago. Like, share, comment on that. I'm not pushed by a major label, anything. Everything is by me. And so just by liking is free, commenting is free, sharing is free. It helps with that algorithm. And I greatly appreciate it. Appreciate the support. So all praise is due to Allah. Love you guys. And as I say before, and I'll always say it, be the peace that you see.